Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited for a few reasons. Obviously, to talk to our guest, and his name is AW Finnegan. He's also known as Adam Finnegan. His book is authored under the name AW Finnegan, which is called The Sleeper Agent. It has a very long title. Adam, you'll have to forgive me. I don't have the rest of the title in front of me. Oh, maybe I do. Well, either way, I'll have all the links in the description of this video to where you can check out Adam's book. I titled this talk today, The Sleeper Agent, the Hidden Threat of Biological Warfare. And we're going to be talking about a lot more than that. Just a little background on AW Finnegan, or Adam. He is a researcher and writer affected by Lyme's disease, which is an immune tolerance, and became chronically ill in 2016. He's a writer, graphic artist, and designer, and an avid reader and researcher of history, biological warfare, esoteric philosophy, spirituality, and Western mystery traditions. Now, his bio goes into much more detail. Oh, I have the book title right in front of me, so excuse me for that. I knew it was in my notes somewhere. It's called The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme's Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. It's a mouthful, but today we're going to be talking about all of that. Hopefully, I have a lot of questions for Adam. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments section of whatever platform you're on, because we stream on multiple platforms. And this is going to air on Thursday, June 15th, in replace of one of my live events, because I'm going to be out of town that day. And so you're watching this, it's not live, but Adam will be in the chat and he'll be able to answer any questions that you guys may have. Hopefully, I'll have some free time and be able to do that too. But let me get that ticker ready, because I want you to be able to visit Adam's website. And of course, I'm going to have all of his social media links, his Amazon page where you can discover his book, which is a fascinating read that I highly suggest, and all of his other social media. So be sure to check that out. But here we are. Adam, hi, dear. How are you?
Great. I'm great. Thank you very much for having me here.
Of course. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you. I didn't finish your book entirely, but I'm like halfway there. It's so well written, and it's such an important topic. And that's why I've been itching to have you on the show.
Yeah.
And, you know, while we need to be careful about some of the words we trip over because this does air on YouTube and whatnot. So I want the folks to know the truth of what you've unearthed and discovered and put many years of research into. So it was a very important topic for me to be able to share with our listeners. And I know you were afflicted with Lyme's disease. So was your mom, correct?
Yeah.
I unfortunately got Lyme's disease about 2 years ago. And it's been a nasty journey. And it still is in many ways for myself, you know, battling the leftover remnants of it. So maybe you can like enlighten us and, you know, during this conversation, because there's a lot of people, like I went into some groups where people talk about Lyme's, and it seems like so many people are affected, right? I mean, I don't know the numbers. I'm sure you do, but let's get started. What I'm going to do is ask you to talk about your journey for a minute or two, and tell us about your backstory. And then tell us about what inspired you to write the Sleeper Agent, and was it a specific event? What triggered this desire for you to get this book out there?
Yeah, so I think it was like 2017 when I decided, I'm going to write this book. And it was, so the year before 2016, I became chronically ill, and I did pull ticks off me that year, and it was a really bad tick season. And I developed these strange headaches and all sorts of weird symptoms, headaches that never go away, that are still with me today. Like the top of my face, it feels like numb and tingly. A lot of people with Lyme disease have that. But so my mother got Lyme disease in the, I think maybe early 2000s or something. And so I was familiar with it. And there was somebody on my street that I grew up with in Grafton, Massachusetts, that had it. And so I remember hearing about that person. But I think it was like 2006. I read an important book that was very influential to me called Lab 257. And that was a book about Plum Island. And that was like the first book that really brought Erich Traub's name out into the open. And his source was, of course, the same one that I had, John Loftus. And John Loftus was the first person to say that Lyme disease was the result of biological warfare tests from the 50s. And that was in 1982, and he said it was being spread by ticks before they even acknowledged that it was being spread by ticks. And then the following year, they said, it's being spread by ticks, but no, those tests never happened, So I had read that, and I always just said, this Traub guy is a very mysterious character, so naturally I wanted to look into him. And so when I got sick, I joined all these groups too, and trying to figure out the disease, because I went into the medical system or the public health system, healthcare providers or whatever, thinking that whatever was wrong with me, it would be easy to take care of, and then I can get on with my life. But that didn't happen. They couldn't find anything wrong with me, and they just kept sending me around to different specialists, and it was just a complete waste of time. And so eventually I started joining groups, and eventually I did find out. I took another test that did say that I had Lyme disease, mycoplasma, reactivated Epstein-Barr virus, and things like that. And I met this woman named Kathleen Dixon, who ran this group back then called Truth Cures. She's no longer involved in it now, but it was an important thing because it taught me about this condition called immune tolerance, which is just, you can think of it as just chronic immunosuppression or chronic immune deficiency, right? And it's kind of a confusing condition because it kind of goes against everything the way people understand disease being all inflammation. Well, this is like the complete reverse. There doesn't appear to be any inflammation, yet you can have the most painful, severe headaches, and you can have, joint pain, fibromyalgia, and just you get scans and everything, and they don't see anything. They don't see the inflammation that they're looking for. And so this was a very unusual condition, but I learned all about it and how it worked. And then I remember saying, okay, Lyme disease, I put this timeline together. It was a really long timeline. And I ended up reaching out to John Loftus. I think it was like on Facebook or something. And I sent him the timeline because I was aware of his, whole talking about Lyme disease being the result of a biological warfare test. And I put, that into the timeline, and I showed him, and he thought it was amazing. And he's like, why don't you give me a call? And so I gave him a call and stuff, and we started talking. And then I told him I was going to write this book, and I asked him, I'd love to have you, your help as a source to tell me what you know about all this stuff. And he had a biodefense source who's able to say a lot. Well, he would, because John Loftus was an attorney, so he would, and what he did was he exposed the Operation Paperclip, the program that brought Nazi scientists to America in the 1980s on a 60 Minutes piece. And so he had, after that, like the Operation Paperclip came out in the open and it got declassified because it was not very, when it was going on, not a lot of people really knew about that.
Right.
That we were bringing these Nazis over here to work for us.
Yep.
And so after that happened, he had a lot of people coming to him from the intelligence community saying, can we get this declassified? Can we get this declassified? Because all this stuff that's terrible that people should know, and they didn't. A lot of them didn't think it was right that there was all these cover-ups and stuff. And so a lot of times what they would do is to hide a scandal, they would classify things at the highest levels, and John Loftus had a Q clearance and a cosmic clearance. So he had the highest level clearance you can get in government. And he said that a lot of times they would put a lot of things that are scandalous into the, classified files and forget about it. But he had the source, and he had seen some files himself about the Nazis and their tests with ticks and stuff. And so I started putting it together, and he started, giving me some hints and whatever, telling me what he could tell me. And I followed up on it, because it wasn't just him. I wasn't just repeating what he said and saying, okay, that's what happened. I actually went and I said, is there anything to what he's telling me? Does the evidence match up with what he's saying? And it absolutely did. And at first it was kind of hard for me to kind of accept that, because he was talking about Russia, and I, when I heard that word, it was this was back when all of that, I don't know, Russian hysteria, we could call it, was going on in politics. So every time someone heard that word, they just laughed it off,
Yeah.
But when it came to biological warfare, it challenged. In other words, it challenged my worldview, and I was like, they didn't do any of that. But I followed up. I said, you know what? I won't be hard-headed. I'll just listen to what he says, and I'll actually look to see if there's anything to support that. And what I found was there was a lot to support that. And it's a complex picture. I know, because before it was I just wanted to blame the U.S. government, right? Because but I found it to be a little more complex than that. And there was this kind of global war going on that that myself and most people had no idea about. And he said John Loftus wrote the forward to this. He said, a third of modern history is classified, in this biological warfare realm. Yeah. It's all classified. And that's why they'll call anybody who tries looking into this stuff a conspiracy theorist.
Of course.
But yet they'll ask us for billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to defend against biological warfare. So it doesn't add up when they point the finger at you and call you crazy for suggesting it. But then, we're paying millions or billions of dollars, for a biodefense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my own doctor told me when I was first diagnosed that he turned around and looked at me and he said, do you know where Lyme's disease came from? And I said, not really. I think Lyme, Connecticut. And he's like, yeah.
Yes.
And it was developed as a biological weapon. He told me that. My own MD told me that. So
I'd be interested in sending him my book or something.
I know. Yeah, he did. I was shocked. He said, he told me it was developed in a lab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I show in my book though, because there's people out there trying to blame Willy Bergdorf, and I show in my book that that's absolutely not the case. See, it was in Germany first, right? And it follows Erich Traub wherever he goes. And one thing, it followed him to South America too. He was taking trips back and forth from Colombia to Plum Island, and he would do that in parallel with the bird patterns. So when the birds fly south, he would go down to Colombia, right? And then when the birds are getting ready to fly back up north, he would go back up to Plum Island. They had this bird vector program, kind of like birds and ticks, like using the birds, migratory birds, as a way to spread disease.
Yeah, they were a delivery system, right?
Yes, right.
Unbelievable.
And I would say too, that a lot of these agents are also, in a way, delivery systems, because what they're really delivering is that little antigen that they, like an outer surface protein, like on the Lyme disease spirochete. It's like a little worm, but it's these small proteins that it sheds that make you really, really sick, right? And so that was actually the bioweapon, is that little protein. And that's why I called it the great imitator antigens of biological warfare. So, you have different viruses, spirochetes, things that would deliver that. And that's why so many things can have a similar looking disease. Like a lot of the people with the chronic fatigue syndrome have a similar thing going on. It's all immune tolerant. So this antigen, it's very immunosuppressive, and it causes immune deficiencies. So, that the spirochete, and when you get those immune deficiencies, what happens is all these latent or sleeping viruses that are already in you start reactivating from like head to toe. Yeah. That's why I said Epstein-Barr virus is common, things like that. And so that's kind of like what it does. And so the spirochete almost becomes like a secondary infection, because you're being overloaded with these viruses at the same time. And it ties back to what Erich Traub found at the Rockefeller Institute. He discovered this condition that was chronic disease. He had the science of chronic disease, basically, and he was using it to make weapons. And a lot of people may be wondering why somebody would make weapons that don't kill. Well, this was actually far more effective as a long-term strategy, and that's why they're called strategic weapons, strategic bioweapons. And the upside of not having people die is that they're sick, worn out, and it places this tremendous burden on a country. You have people who are sick and can't work. Somebody has to take care of them. Then, you have like all of these neurological diseases too, where kids are.
It's worse than death, I would think.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like some people, and I've said that many times, like when I'm at my sickest, I was like, man, I would rather just have a, fatal disease at this point.
Planet. Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense to me.
Right.
And then it's a burden on our medical system. And it costs billions of dollars to treat these people.
Mm-hmm. And they don't even know how to treat them. They don't even. Right. And that's why a lot of people. So what is so important about the sleeper agent is that Erich Traub showed how you can have a devious infection, but yet no antibodies, no inflammation. And that's why you have all of these people going in. I mean, I don't know if you tested positive on the first CDC test that they give, but most people who are infected test negative.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And you have to go to get this other test to figure out if you have it.
Right.
And so but a lot of people, millions of Americans are going into the public health system, telling them I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I have headaches, joint pain, everything. These are the classic signs of this immune tolerance. And they go and they try to figure out what's wrong with them. And they have absolutely no answers. They're like, we don't see anything wrong with you.
Well, that's why I think this is so important to talk about, because as I said, I think so many people are afflicted with Lyme's. Like for me, I noticed a rash on my leg, like two small circular rashes. Now I have a dog and I walk him in the wooded area all the time, but it didn't make sense to me. Like when I saw it, I thought it was just a little rash. So my doctor gave me some cortisone cream or something. And then time went by and my knee blew up. Like my knee like the joint in my knee had so much fluid around it. So I went to my orthopedic, and I have to thank God for him, because he said, oh, we have to drain this immediately. As he was draining it, he said, this fluid doesn't look good. So I'm going to send it out for testing. And I said, what do you
Yeah.
mean it doesn't look good? What could it be? He said, well, it looks like Lyme's disease. I said, what? I was
Yeah.
flawed, Adam. I was flawed.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
a few days later, whatever time the test took to come back, it was positive for Lyme. And the kicker is he immediately, I'm allergic to that. What do they give you? The antibiotic for that?
Doxycycline.
Doxycycline. I'm allergic to that. So they gave me Z-Pak instead, which I
Mhm.
heard isn't as powerful as using Doxy. So, but they had no choice.
Yeah, I never had very good doxycycline was my body
No.
does not like it either.
No, I never took that. And then, long story short, I had to do several rounds of Z-Pak. And then after a test, and then another test, and then finally, I think the third test came back that it no longer was active for Lyme's, but it was in my blood. Like it showed a residual, like it showed that I had Lyme's disease. Let's put it that way, which flawed me. And the kicker is this. So people, if this happens to you, you're not alone. I went to a disease specialist, someone that manages disease-borne illnesses, things like that, an infectious disease doctor. I went to very good. He's supposed to be very excellent at what he does. And I sit in his office, and within 2 minutes, looks at my stuff, and he saw positive several times. And he said to me, you don't have Lyme's disease. It's a false positive. And I'm like, but I have every symptom. I have everything that's associated. No, you have, I don't know what you have, but it's not. And he just,
wow.
It was awful. So I went back to my original doctor, and he's like, you had Lyme's, there's no doubt.
That's what it's a controversial thing, and they've made it so that they just want to cover it up, and they teach the doctors, to do everything possible to say that it's not that,
Awful.
And that's what it is. And that is the whole American Lyme Disease Foundation was set up to kind of guide as a source of guidance for doctors. Like I talked about them in the far later chapters, like 13 and 14. And it just, these tests happened, and I basically show so much evidence that goes around that points right to Erich Traub. And so in 1939, I have him with the spirochete that was used to make Lyme disease. It was a bird strain of Lyme disease. It was called Borrelia anserina. Right? It only affected birds. But he took it. He adapted it. So in the same year that he got that, it was from his student Werner Schaefer. And Schaefer says in the paper on the spirochete that I was asked to get this strain from my superiors, who was Erich Traub, and the same year that happens, Erich Traub's mentor, Carl Beller, teaches him all about tick-borne diseases and the rickettsia, and he teaches him how, and it even said in the paper, so his mentor publishes a paper on heart water, which is a babesia-like parasite, and he starts talking about all different ticks and the diseases. And in that paper, he specifically says that we had a complex disease happen in a dog from a mix of infections like Bartonella, babesia, rickettsia. And it was like, these are all the co-infections that later show up in the ticks, like the black-legged tick and whatnot in America. He's teaching Erich Traub about all this, and Erich Traub's like, well, this is a perfect thing I can use to induce this immune tolerance thing. And now back up a little, when Erich Traub was at the Rockefeller Institute, he discovered he could reactivate latent viruses from the inside. Like he had a mouse colony, and he took foreign protein like antigen and he injects it into a mouse's brain, reactivates a virus, that the mouse gets sick and reactivates a virus and starts an epidemic from scratch. From him doing that, he started an epidemic. And then he realized that it would cause this slow chronic disease, And so he studied the mice the whole time he was at Rockefeller. It was with a virus called lymphocytic choriomeningitis, or LCM virus for short. And he spent all his time there studying that. He also worked a little bit on equine encephalitis, or eastern equine encephalitis, triple E, mosquitoes. And so he spent most of his time, on that LCM, but he configured how you could induce these slow chronic diseases. Now, when he went back to Germany, he's learning all about the tick-borne diseases. He has the spirochete. So Borrelia burgdorferi, I have papers showing that it came from Borrelia anserina. It's closest to this bird strain. And so he's down there in Germany, and during the war, he starts making this stuff. He starts weaponizing that bird strain into Lyme disease and all of these mix of infections all rolled into one tick. That was the idea, that when you got this mix of infection, it would induce this chronic disease, right? But it would also be very confusing for diagnosing, because when you have multiple diseases all rolled into one, it makes you don't know what's going on. And so it was that was the thing. A big thing in biological warfare was confusing diagnosis, bring on many diseases at once with these, I call them a Russian doll cocktail. It's like the doll within a doll within a doll within a doll. It's like that, only it's infections. And I I show like the black-legged tick, the main tick that just spreads the stuff all over. It was listed as having no diseases, transmitted no human diseases all the way up until 1951. They were saying that, right? And then I have the first, in 1956, I have the first newspaper article I can find where it's saying that the black-legged tick is now a serious transmitter of disease, right? That was 1958, right? But then I have Polly Murray. She wrote a book called The Widening Circle. She was one of the first Lyme cases, and she was part of the original studies by Alan Steer. She lived in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and she said she got sick in the summer of it was either 1955 or 1956, but it was in the 50s. So, and then I have another paper, Alan Steer, who's publishing about finding it in Massachusetts and all the way back to 1962. So, a lot of people are saying 1975, but that's just the year when they acknowledged it. It had been spreading for 20 years. And even in the Widening Circle, the doctor who wrote the foreword said, Polly Murray had already been sick for 20 years.
So did they release this spirally, I guess it's called, in birds?
Spirochete.
Spirochete. Was that released in birds intentionally because they knew that they would migrate?
Here's the thing. So here's the thing. In biodefense, so when they brought Erich Traub over here, they basically put him at the top of the biological warfare program. He was advising them on all the things they needed to do to run this biological warfare program, because he was an expert who was doing it during the war there was a German plum island called Insel Reims. That's where he did a lot of his important work. But they initiated these testing activities called simulant tests. I don't know if you're familiar, but they do is they take what they say is a harmless bacteria, and they spray it all over somewhere, and they were doing it over populated areas. And the whole idea is to see how it spreads out, to see how a bioterror attack would, occur. It's a simulation, right? And so they started doing this, and not only did they do these simulant tests with open air, bacteria, also spraying them from planes, but they also did these simulant tests in insects, where they said, we'll release all of these ticks and insects with a harmless bacteria, and we'll follow it to see how it spreads out. And he according to what, John Loftus's source told me, is that he was telling them that it was, it leaves a rash. It's a harmless simulant tracer. It leaves a rash, and that's how we track it. That's how we tracked it over in Germany and stuff. And so they basically, they listened to his advice, and they start. So he's releasing ticks like on Plum Island and on birds, right? And that's why he was traveling back and forth with the bird pattern, right? And so that was part of the simulant testing activities. And the other bacteria that they were spraying all over, like, so San Francisco, for example, that was one that got media attention because people died. There was a bacteria called Serratia marcescens.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and so this guy died, and from the infection that he got when they sprayed it all over San Francisco. It was from a Navy ship off the coast, and it let out this mist of this bacteria, and all these people were being hospitalized with it's very antibiotic resistant, that bacteria, and they were having trouble treating people with it, but they had never seen it before, and they're like, why are all these people suddenly coming in here with this nasty infection that usually doesn't cause any problems for anybody? And what I show in my book is that back in Germany, Erich Traub actually weaponized that bacteria, Serratia marcescens. He weaponized it, and I show, he used viruses to weaponize things. So there'd be like this DNA transfer or antigens from the virus would start to be expressed on the bacteria, through these methods that he was doing. But I show that he did that to that bacteria. So then when he came over here, he must have been producing the simulant bacteria for them, and they were spraying it over people, and it was weaponized. And so that's kind of like what happened, was that these were simulant tests. Most of the people doing them actually believed them and thought it really was harmless, right? And then what happened was, so Erich Traub was able to come over here through a guy named Donald McLean, who was MI6, British intelligence, right? And in 1951, he defected to Moscow, and he left like a recording saying he's a communist, blah, blah, blah. So after that, and he was also responsible for getting most of those Nazis over here.
Now, was he a part of that, or did he just expose Project Paperclip? I just want to, for folks that, I just want to show.
Are you talking about Donald McLean?
No, I'm talking about Erich Traub.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to share.
What was the question about him?
Did he expose Project Paperclip, or was he a part of it?
He was part of it. Yeah, he was running the show on the biological warfare program when we brought him over here. He was telling them how to set up Plum Island. He was at Plum Island. He was like leading the Plum Island research. I had like there are articles trying to debunk the Lyme disease connection to biological warfare. They're right that it wasn't in 1975. I show it was in the 50s, but they're wrong when they say Erich Traub has no connection to Plum Island. I have the documents that show he worked there. He wrote it, and he wrote the law. There was a law and a congressional hearing that was brought about, and it was about the creation of a foot and mouth disease laboratory, Plum Island. And in that hearing, this was 1948, they talk about getting him. They actually made a reference to him saying, are we going to get him over here and stuff? They didn't say his name, but they said certain things that about a person who, he came over here and applied, and then they sent him back because he had Nazi affiliation. So now he's with the Russians again. The Soviet Union overtook his lab. So Germany, of course, was split down the middle, East Germany, West Germany. Well, the Soviet Union got East Germany, and they got Insel Reims, where Erich Traub was. And what happened was they they used war crimes, apparently, to blackmail him into serving the Soviet Union.
Oh, jeez.
And sent him over here in this operation because, Donald McLean, the guy from MI6, that high-level British intelligence, he was the one getting all these Nazis over here, and he suddenly defects to Moscow. So then Western intelligence is scrambling like, oh my God, he's the guy who got all these Nazis over here. What do we do? And then they started to realize a lot of the Nazis were actually double agents too, because a lot of them were subject to blackmail as well, because, they say, well, you can work for us or we can send you to Nuremberg.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm showing his Wikipedia page because everything you spoke about him clearly is on here. So while we can't trust Wikipedia 1,000%, I still think there's some good content. I mean, basically everything you just talked about, Adam, is bioweapon research. You know, everything is on here. So for folks that are listening and not watching, you can just Google him and find out some more information, because your book has citations all over the place. So
yeah, I mean, there's over 1,000 citations in this book, and I only cite to like official things that it's about, like, I go at this like, okay, I have to convince somebody who's very skeptical and if you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, I go to all of the source documents. Oh, and for example, I collected all of Erich Traub's published research, and that meant even translating all of the German into English so I could analyze it. And
clearly you put in so much work into this book.
I mean, back here, that's only some of the research from my book on all those 3-ring binders you see back there. But
how long I see that. How long did it take you from like when you first started investigating this to publishing? How many years did it take you?
I want to say like 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
And then, it was like intensive research too. And I met John Loftus, introduced me to these 2 women who were writing a screenplay about the same thing, and they helped me get a lot of the source documents. And as I was writing my book, I would consult with them about what I would find, and they would kind of work that into the screenplay they're writing. And
for a movie, or
well, they were hoping for a Netflix series, but I don't think that is going forward now. But I hope it does someday. But for now, it's just kind of.
What was it about? Lyme's and like the whole?
No, it was about the whole. I mean, it was basically the same thing I say in The Sleeper Agent. It was about Erich Traub. About Erich Traub and weaponizing Lyme disease. Yeah, that's what they were going for. And it was really good. It would have been really great if they had that.
It would have been. So I want to get this straight. So Erich Traub was part of Project Paperclip, and then he was being blackmailed, jump forward into either you work for us or whatever else they threatened him with. So at what point did he decide to expose all of this stuff and put the research out there? Like, at what point was that?
When I got all this out there?
No, when he did. When Erich Traub decided to expose.
No, he didn't. He didn't try to expose anything.
Oh, so he didn't expose any of that.
No, he was he. John Loftus exposed it on a piece of 60 Minutes. John Loftus was a Nazi hunter for the Department of Justice, and his job was to find Nazi war criminals hiding in America and prosecute them. But what he found was that the DOJ was actually covering for them and hiding them and preventing him from doing his job. So that's why he wrote this book called America's Nazi Secret. And in that book is the first quote. In that book, it was originally published as the Belarus Secret. And then Trinde, who published my book, republished it as America's Nazi Secret, and that was in 2012, I believe. And then this book got published in December of 2023, I believe.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now on Amazon. America's Nazi. Okay, I just want to make sure I have the players right. Okay, so John Loftus exposed. How did he get access to Erich Traub's work? Like, how did he?
It was actually his biodefense source who was coming to him and telling him all of this stuff that happened.
Okay.
And he kind of would verify it with some of the classified files. And so I'm trying to find the quote by him, but he made a brief reference to it in America's Nazi Secret about here it is. He said, even more disturbing are the records of the Nazi germ warfare scientists who came to America. They experimented with poison ticks dropped from planes to spread rare diseases. I received some information suggesting that the U.S. tested some of these poison ticks on the Plum Island artillery range off the coast of Connecticut during the early 1950s. Mm-hmm. I explored the old spies' hypothesis that the poison ticks were the source of the Lyme disease spirochete, and that migrating waterfowl were the vectors that carried the ticks from Plum Island all up and down the eastern seaboard. Most of the germ warfare records have been shredded, but there is a top-secret U.S. document confirming that clandestine attacks on crops and animals took place at this time. The Lyme disease outbreak in America was monitored secretly under the cover of a New England health study. And that was about multiple sclerosis, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was like in the late 50s, and that became controversial when this guy was saying that we're finding spirochetes in MS patients. And they like attacked them, kind of like how they do to people now who try to speak out. Like any doctors, they just get character assassination by the establishment.
How do you spell spirochete, Adam?
SPIROCHETE.
Okay, now because I like I like to show folks that that this, because I mean I'm all over the place because I have so much I want to say.
Okay. It's okay.
First of all, John Loftus is portrayed as a conspiracy theorist on Wikipedia, which really appeals me because those two words are meaningless today because everybody knows that the only difference between the truth and a conspiracy theory is about 6 months or less. So, that disturbs me that they had to go and throw that in there under his bio. But regardless of that, I want to show folks that the work you've done is absolutely 1,000% legit, well-researched, and you know what you're talking about. Now, I just Googled that word, and as you can see, there's such a thing as spirochete, okay? And it says a spirochete or spirochete is a member of the Phylum Spirocatoda. How do you say that word?
Oh, I know. Spirocata.
Yeah, which contains distinctive negative bacteria. So there, just like to throw that out there to folks. And again, if you're listening, you can, Google it yourself. And here's some pictures of what it looks like, exactly the way Adam explained it. So it's all over the internet, folks. This is not made up stuff. Unbelievable. So now John wrote the preface to the foreword to your book, correct?
Yes.
So what's his life like today? Tell us a little bit about what he's up to and what he's doing, and do you have a close relationship with him?
I just talked to him. And by the way, I work for Trine Day. I didn't put that in my bio as I just forgot, but I work for Trine Day, the publishing company now. I got a job with them last year. And he's usually very important. John Loftus, Chris Milligan, who owns Trine Day, likes to have him on the Journey podcast and stuff. And he was also involved in that what was going to be that screenplay. We're really hoping to get that off the ground, but it didn't work out. I mean, it could sometime in the future, but yeah, I don't really know like what he's up to. I know he has Lyme disease too.
Oh, good Lord.
And he has to get a lot of surgeries and stuff.
Can you send me the link to that publisher? Because I would love to check them out.
Yeah, it's just TrineDay.com. TrineDay.com is the TRINE Day DAY. Trine Day.
Got it. I got it.
.com, and that's the publishing company I work for, and they have published a lot of amazing books.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because I always like to get ideas for future guests on the show.
We have so many people. You go on there, you look, there's just so many great books that they have published.
What are you doing for them, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm doing kind of like marketing director. Nice. That's my main thing, is the marketing, and then I was hosting the Journey with Chris podcast, and just like anything that he has. I was making these 1-minute book ads, right? And I made like I made all of those books, so it was like over 180 books. I made these 1-minute book ads because I'm good with stuff like that. So I would say my position is kind of like diverse, but mostly just focusing in marketing.
Nice. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So, anything else about Lyme's that we should know? Like you said, you're still suffering with some of the residual effects, right? And so am I.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is there? Go ahead.
In my last chapter too, I got into a lot of stuff about that V word that we're not really supposed to talk about on YouTube, and how these public health people that they had, for like the polio one, like Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin, I show serious, because they let Sabin team up with this guy MP Chumakov from the Soviet Union. And it's just very disturbing. And Jonas Salk having he had an FBI investigation into him, and they found all of these. He was a member of all these Communist Front organizations. And
you know what, Adam? Someday I'm going to schedule another one of these.
Yeah, definitely. I'll talk to you as many times as you like. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And what I'll do is I'll air it just like on Rumble and on networks that can allow us to have freedom of speech and say what we want.
I know, it's ridiculous. I can't believe we're at this point. Back when we were saying, they're going to censor, people like, no way, that would never happen in America.
Well, it did, and it's still ongoing.
Yeah, and now I'm hearing that even Substack now is starting to engage in it.
Oh, of course. And I adore this network and have the absolute utmost respect for it. But in order, to continue to be respectful, we'll continue watching our views. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But back to Erich Traub, is that this is the story for all of those people who go in to get help from the public health system, and they're just, thrown to the wolves, and like, you're not sick. And then when you keep trying to get help, they eventually send you to psychiatry.
It happened to you. It's happening to millions of people. So, you can't label people's medical conditions as a conspiracy theory, because we're sick and we're experiencing. I mean, I thank the Lord, I'm a lot better than what I was, although I have residual joint pain that's nasty. It's nasty. And in all my life, I never had that until I had Lyme's disease. So it's a real thing. Yeah. I was assured by my doctor that in time, a lot of his patients did get relief down the road, and it would kind of like ease up. And I don't know if it ever goes away. Does it? Like, what does that world look like for And then I want to talk
Yeah.
about other things aside from Lyme's, but
Sure.
what does that look like for people that have Lyme's? Is there hope?
Yeah, I mean, I've not figured out a way to get rid of it really, and
Yeah,
I just kind of feel like you have to take the healing journey on your own and figure out, because I also have met a lot of people who were so sick but drain their bank accounts trying to get better, to, paying these Lyme doctors top dollar, and basically just so much money. And they ended up still no better than the people who didn't even spend a dime on them. And
terrible.
it's very unfortunate, because it's kind of like, I don't think a lot of these doctors don't even really know what they're dealing with, and they're just
Exactly.
kind of throwing everything they can at it, and it's not doing
And you
any.
don't really blame them because
No,
they're not.
I don't blame them.
Yeah,
I'm just
no, I know
saying,
you don't.
it's like, it's just unfortunate when people burn through so much
Exactly.
money, and then they don't get any results, because when you're paying someone, it's like you're hoping for results. And I know they don't. I know they have good intentions, but I just kind of feel like we got to figure something else out, because this is just, this is draining.
Yeah.
This is draining people just badly, and I just
Yeah.
kind of feel like you have to take it yourself. It's like a journey that you have to figure out what is the best thing for
Yeah.
me. If you
No,
want to pay somebody,
I'm not a huge proponent of like taking a pill for every darn thing, but
yeah,
they give me anti-inflammatories, like Advil, that kind of thing, but
yeah,
stronger prescription, and they do help. They,
that's
me,
good.
they do help me personally. So I don't
Yeah,
have.
and you got to kind of, I mean, we don't really have any choice but to kind of
Exactly.
experiment with certain things, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I too, I'm a lot better, but definitely I still wake up, sometimes in the brain fog, and it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
man, I feel like oh
What is
man,
some of your other complaints? Did you get joint pain and muscle pain, or
I
were
have
you?
joint pain and muscle pain, but one thing that really helps me, and I don't treat this hard. Oh, there's this thing I'm doing called Allison V from my friend John Scott Perez. He it's this thing from garlic, but it has to be like vaped in order to get it into your bloodstream, because it's not very bioavailable. It's something called Allison from garlic, and
Well,
it
garlic is supposed to be very healing in and of
yeah,
itself.
but this gets it into your bloodstream like very quickly, and that was what he has this patent for it. So I've been doing that, but other than that, like I kind of just like stopped trying to treat it really hard, because I just seem to like make myself sicker. But
Yeah,
one
yeah,
thing that really helps me is getting out, and getting a lot of exercise. Like I love BMX biking, and so that's like what I do. Like I work from home, but I'm able to just like ride my bike when I want, as long as I get everything, squared away with my job. And it really helps me, like getting out and getting
good,
all that exercise, because I like to do like all these tricks and stuff, and it's a lot of
nice.
fun. And I just kind of feel like you have to kind of
Yeah, you
like
got to do what works for you. You got to do what
yeah,
works for
yeah. In a nutshell, that's
you.
what I would say.
Absolutely. Well, that's good. At least you're feeling better, and my heart goes out to because there's so many news groups too, and like on Telegram and on Facebook
Mhm.
for people that suffer from Lyme's disease. It just it's growing exponentially. So I would think it would be called an epidemic at this point. I mean,
Yeah, and also it's like a lot of other things that carry that antigen, because he didn't just put Lyme disease out there. It was all this other stuff too, and
yeah,
so they all create this similar condition, and so that was kind of like, and a lot of those conditions will look a lot like Lyme disease. Lyme
right.
disease tends to be a little more aggressive, because you got the spirochetes on top of it. Uh, but there's also other things, and this book kind of, they tried to bury that condition, immune tolerance, and gave the Nobel Prize to these two guys that didn't even work together, and it was given to them in error, and it was made into about organ transplants. But it's a long story, but they knew all about it and they've been covering it up, and it's
What
something
about
that has to.
what about anti-parasitic drugs? That doesn't
Some of
help.
those seem to help some people. Yeah, I mean, I don't, like I would say try it if it helps. Like, what
Didn't
do you
try it.
call it? What are the ones? The one that was,
Hydroxychloroquine
yeah,
and what's the other one?
yeah. It's like right on this.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue too. I know
Um,
hydroxychloroquine. Ivermectin.
yes,
Ivermectin.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
Ivermectin. Right.
Well,
Some people helped. It didn't really do much for me, but I didn't take it for very long.
Did you have any side effects when you took that, or?
What's that? No, I didn't. Not that I noticed.
Oh, that's good.
And same with the hydrochloroquine. I had taken that at one point too.
And you didn't notice any big? No.
Yeah, I mean, not really. Not that I remember.
Yeah. This whole thing is just, it's just so concerning. It's so concerning.
This like blows the whole thing wide open. The whole chronic disease epidemic can be. This shows how this kind of happened. Why the chronic disease epidemic is exploding here, and it shows, how the public health system is actually trying to deny it's even a disease. Like, or they'll just, they say autoimmune and stuff. And autoimmune can happen simultaneously with this chronic immunosuppression. It's kind of like a confused immune system, not so much like an overactive, hypercharged one, but it's confused, and it happens simultaneously with the immunosuppression. So it's but this story, it really, I mean, it's deep. Some people, I would say, might want to read it several times, because it's like,
there's a lot.
There's 7 years of hardcore research. I had originally a 1,000-page manuscript, and I had to kind of rework it into something that was digestible. But there's so much stuff, and it's like this whole war has been playing out without anybody even realizing. There's been like this hot war going on, a biological warfare, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of America. I even had.
In your book, you say there are two classes of biological weapons: those that act quickly and typically kill, like tactical bioweapons, and those that act slowly to disable, tire, exhaust, and those are called strategic weapons, right?
Right.
So strategic weapons, you say, are stealthy, hard to track, diagnose, and treat, and that's what we're talking about today, right? So would this fall under that strategic?
Yeah. Absolutely, all of this stuff, the whole, but it's a complex picture, because now also the public health system is making it worse with things that we can't talk about. It's actually fueling it even more, and it's very. But this condition that Erich Traub discovered is behind it all. Like, it's all this condition that he was studying from these antigens, these small little proteins, were the cause of it, and that's basically what we're dealing with. And that's why, and it kind of flipped our understanding of immunology on its head, because it's like, how could you be sick without antibodies and without inflammation? And this shows how that can be possible. I quote a lot of his papers, talking about it. And this immune tolerance thing, it induces what I call the dark triad of immune tolerance. The dark triad, a triplet, right? Chronic disease, neuropsychiatric disorders, and cancers. Okay. Cancers also comes into this because Erich Traub found that when he induced this, he could raise the cancer rate in the mice to 50%.
Oh my goodness!
So it's a serious thing. I mean, it's a really, it's like what's in that book is so. The implications of what I've discovered here with this whole immune tolerance thing and his discovery and using it to make biological warfare or biological weapons, is like, it's the implications of it are so far reaching. It literally would shake the foundation of our scientific community, of our public health system. But the thing is that they've known about it, and they were actually even having conferences about it in the 1970s. They knew that it could be induced by antigens.
Yeah.
And they were, and they were talking, well, we tried to get Erich Traub here, but he can't be here, regrettably, but he's the godfather of immune tolerance, basically.
What are the statistics like globally for Lyme's?
Oh, I don't know, but it's definitely got a global reach now. Europe has it. It's pretty much even in Australia, it's down there. And they try really hard to say that it's not there.
Oh, did they?
There. Yeah, it's like they've got this whole cover up in place.
What in the world is that all about? That brings me to my next question to you. Mm-hmm. How is writing this book and uncovering all this information, how has that affected your concerns about like surveillance, privacy, psychological autonomy, things like that? How has that affected you? Like you said, you had this like global awakening or some type of an event like that really made you open your eyes. I forget the verbiage you used to describe it, but something like that. Mm-hmm. So since then, think back 10 years even, how have you changed in terms of your own autonomy and your ability to be an autonomous person without feeling surveilled, invaded, infected, all that stuff?
Right. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I assume everything that I'm doing is being watched anyway, like on the digital space. But I mean, I don't agree with it whatsoever. It's just I don't really like let it, bother me as much. Like when I had read a lot of books about the whole surveillance stuff and everything. I had a time where I was reading so many books, and you can see behind me, obviously, I have a lot of books. And I got a general understanding of all of this, how the world really works and all of this stuff. And then I decided when I got sick, I'm like, okay, they got the wrong person sick. I'm going to figure this stuff out. So I was motivated. I mean, I felt like I was driven by a force that was beyond myself. Like
you really took it personally.
Yeah, and I was like, it was something I was so driven to do. It was just like felt like a force, moving through me the whole time. And it was just like I was amazed by it because it was like this raw determination. And I put this book together. And it was like, I'm so happy with the result. And I think probably going to write some other follow-up books to try to explain this condition, especially because this, they're talking about dealing with the chronic disease epidemic. Well, this is all the research that shows how it even works. All of Erich Traub's, he's the originator of all of this. Like he's the one who can figure it out. Or he's the one who started publishing about this. And they even say in the conferences, Erich Traub is the guy who started all this. And even one of the virologists who wrote a book called Slow Virus Diseases, John Hodgkin, he writes in the beginning of his book, to Erich Traub, who started the whole thing.
So Erich Traub, he essentially created these bacteria that he used as bioweaponry for political reasons. Am I correct?
Well, he took natural organisms and then started, adapting them to new species, changing them. Bioengineering was done, way before recombinant DNA technology. Yeah. They would modify diseases by selective animal passages. You run them, and even today they still do this in gain of function research. They pass it between ferrets and stuff.
Sure.
Well, that's the idea. That's how they did it back in the days. They used certain animals. Like, for example, they had foot and mouth disease. They adapted it to mice. They said we ran it through the mice 140 times, and then the 140th passage it mutated and adapted to the mouse. Like, so it was like, and Erich Traub had a very like he this was a fine art for him, in other words, and he was like a genius. Almost like he was kind of like an evil genius, right?
Yeah.
He could run circles around all these American scientists. There was something in him that he had a knack for this, and he used it for, unfortunate purposes. And so, yeah, he decided, and you could say, I don't know, he started using it for the Nazis and then for the Soviet Union. I don't know. He may have not liked the Soviet Union, but got blackmailed. And so I don't really know how he felt about it. But, of course, it seemed he didn't really have any qualms doing it. He was telling them.
I always say if not him, it would have been somebody else that would have done it. He just, was first in line. And look at what they're doing today. It's disgraceful. Yeah. And they're thankfully the president is putting a stop to a lot of this biological testing and stuff. That's all I'm going to say on that. But what about the future? Do you think that Lyme's disease will have a potential cure? Like, do you see any positive signs of anybody taking this seriously?
It's been very been very unfortunate from the public health perspective, because they have done almost everything possible to hide this and cover it up, and all of the other and the diseases that are very similar to Lyme disease caused by other agents, they cover all of that up. Like the Gulf War syndrome was part of this, chronic fatigue.
Well, let me ask you, what's the benefit in the I know, but I would like people to hear it from you. What's the benefit in covering up all of these diseases instead of being open and trying to help the people? Like, what's their end game?
Yeah, so it's crazy, because it's like, if they were just honest or something, it would be a lot easier on them. But it seems that there's this like three-way blackmail going on between Britain, Russia, and the United States, and like they're covering up for one another, and they signed this off-record tripartite agreement that they would not expose each other's bioweapons violations and stuff. And I don't know. It's crazy, because like they're destroying themselves in the process. The public health system has almost no credibility whatsoever these days.
Yeah, that's true.
People, and in the other practices that they're engaged in is just absolutely unreal to me. Some of the stuff that they're doing, and we know what we're talking about here, but
absolutely.
It's like I the way I see it is almost like, and if you read the last chapter of my book, you'll see what I'm talking about, is that it seems that we've been slowly infiltrated. I say British intelligence is also involved in that too. I'm not just like trying to blame Russia or anything, the Soviet Union, but the Nazis kind of like joined the Soviet Union after they were defeated, and like to destroy the West. And looks like there was a slow drip infiltration, and they took over the public health system, and now they're kind of using it as a weapon against us. That's the way I see it. Like, I hate to say it, but it's like some of the stuff they're doing, they know all about this immune tolerance, yet they're doing things that induce it. And
well, isn't there a global treaty that prevents countries from using biological warfare? I remember seeing.
Yep, and actually, it kind of, the way it was written is that it actually allowed them to expand their offensive biological warfare programs, because that treaty in 1972, it said that you can't do any offensive work, but you can do defensive work. So all they do is they just call all of their offensive biological warfare research defensive. They just hide it all, and then they're able to have
So
this cover.
let me get this clear. So you can't use biological warfare in an offensive tactical measure, but you can use it to defend yourself. Am I correct?
Right.
That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd.
Like you can do defensive research, like to find treatments, vaccines and stuff. But what ended up happening, and I say there's a guy, quoted that talks about how when that treaty was put into effect, it actually helped us make more biological warfare research, and we greatly expanded our thing, like, and that's basically what they're saying. That treaty helped them have larger biological warfare programs.
That's crazy. Because I remember not long ago, I think, don't quote me, but I think it was in Syria. They were using sarin gas. Now, is that a biological weapon?
That's chemical?
That's chemical. So, okay. So does that fall under the same like area where they can't use, because what's to stop them from putting biologics in chemical weapons? What's to stop them from doing that?
I think there's an entire other war with the chemical warfare. What they try to do is to get, harmful chemicals in the foods, in the water, the fluoridation of the water. That's chemical warfare.
It's chemical warfare. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's very relevant. RFK is, thank God, fortunately trying to fight for us to have the fluoride removed.
Yeah, and like the dyes and stuff.
Absolutely. Yellow dye 40 is a petroleum product, and kids are eating it every day like nobody's business. Red dye, whatever, all those different reds. So it's god awful. So, you talk about personal autonomy. Nobody asked me if I wanted to eat yellow dye 40 or even bioengineered food. Like, what in the butt? Every time I go shopping, it takes me, I would say, a good 40 minutes to an hour longer than it normally would, because I'm picking everything up to see if it's biogenetically engineered.
Absolutely. You have to read everything you eat. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost like a waste of time, because I think all of our corn, bananas, those are all bioengineered, probably coffee. A lot of the things that, that we've been ingesting have been bioengineered for decades. So you can't escape it, really.
Yeah, no, you can't. There's no way. It's like, it's everywhere. And now they're putting it all in the environment and everything. And, I don't know. And the more I analyze this, there was one guy actually who wrote a paper saying that there was a covert, population control measure in place. I didn't really cover that, but the more I look at their actions, what they're doing to us, it's like, it looks exactly like that. Like,
and again, you get labeled conspiracy theorist, which infuriates me. Now, what did you think if you heard about the fog that's been mysteriously appearing in different states? And I have a very good friend that got very sick from that, by the way.
Those are simulant tests. I am almost positive. Those are simulant tests like they were doing back in the day. I think they're testing out aerogenic V-word.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. Yeah. And so that's what I think it is, definitely. And so like I was going to say, is those tests that they're doing in the 50s that got all those people sick, that never stopped. Like, they're still doing that. They're still doing simulant tests as a biodefense activity. And a lot of the stuff that they're doing was actually at the advice of Erich Traub. As I said before, he was like, and a lot of what he did was turning animal diseases into human diseases. That was another thing I forgot to mention, is that that's why, he's a veterinarian, but the veterinarians made the best bioweaponeers because they could, they understood zoonosis, right?
Gosh,
So
that's scary.
that was his life. He was, he was so talented in that he could run circles around other people. And they even said in his file, there are no personnel in the United States that can replace him. He's that important. Yeah, that's what they said. That is his level of talent and everything. He's unreplaceable. And I think, there's a concerted effort to hide all of the information about Erich Traub. Try to blame other people that are kind of like unimportant. But this guy is like a doorway to the entire chronic disease epidemic. That's what it's saying. It's not just about Lyme disease. This guy actually figured out the entire science of chronic disease with these immune deficiencies.
Yeah, because everything seems to be an autoimmune sickness.
Well, I would say that that's happening in parallel with these immune deficiencies, right? There's a lot going on with that. And some of them are being called autoimmune that are just the immunosuppression, but they don't want, they don't want to talk about the immunosuppression because it conflicts with their whole paradigm of immunology, being that inflammation is the cause of all disease. But what Erich Traub shows is that actually that's only like one half of the spectrum. There's also a whole other spectrum of disease that doesn't really show any inflammation, but the cells are being destroyed by reactivated viruses. So it's still disease. Like you're still feeling that, even though there's no inflammation.
Didn't fibromyalgia become a thing? Like how many years ago? Maybe 10.
And now they couldn't figure it out, like because there was no inflammation involved. It's all from the immunosuppression, and you got viruses that have reactivated, just like slowly destroying your joints and stuff, or not. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm still able to exercise and do all of the things I would do if I was healthy. It's just like more of an annoyance to me because it's like you're always aching and stuff.
Right.
But this book is so important because it's really like the foundation of this whole chronic disease epidemic. I wish RFK would read it. Because, talking about, setting up studies about what's going on with these chronic diseases, but Erich Traub's research is already published. There's there's an ocean of literature showing exactly what is happening.
Did you try to reach out to RFK at all? I mean, that would probably be an impossible mission.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I haven't.
You should try on X. Just keep message bombing him because he might see it someday. Just keep blasting him with messages, and he might see it someday.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I mean, I've put together this little website on this Substack called the Biosecurity Ethics and Immune Tolerance Awareness Initiative. And I'm going to try to kind of get that into like an official organization, maybe like a nonprofit or something to educate people. It's like, basically I show hold on, I have the link here. I can even put it in the chat if that helps.
Yeah, do that. I'm sharing your website right now.
Yes. I just sent the link.
Okay.
To the Substack. But that's my website. I designed that website myself. And I have a timeline actually. If there's a tab called Erich Traub, right? If you go on that timeline, if you click on Erich Traub in my website, there's a button that says Erich Traub. It's a long timeline, kind of showing all of Erich Traub's work. And this is my biosecurity ethics thing, and this kind of goes over the whole chronic disease thing and how they understood all about it. And so I'm going to be publishing more in that area. I also have a personal Substack, but this one I'm really going to try to get off the ground into like an organization, because I think it's just so important that I'm kind of obligated to, because nobody else is really talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely an important topic for sure. What do you see in the future in terms of biologics, biological warfare? What's your next fear? What's your greatest?
I mean, they're always talking about, the next pandemic and things, and all the SARS is like something that also causes that, like all the long COVID people, whatever. It's like it's the same
sad.
thing. That's the same
sad.
thing.
COVID people, I feel so bad for them.
Yeah, and they're not really helping any of those people, because it's the same deal. It's the same deal. They tell these people, we can't figure, we don't know what's wrong with you. So that's kind of where we're at. But I don't know. I mean, I don't let it ruin my day, even though I've seen a lot of really messed up stuff, and to know that they're, they think they, and I talk about the laws that allow them to test on us. There's a law that says that they can't test on us, but in the exceptions part of that law, it says they can, as long as they call it, a research activity, or like they had a long list of things that you could use it for. And it basically strikes out the law that says that they can't test on us. So they have these loopholes in place, and they're able to do whatever they want. It's just, the more people know about it, the more, we have a chance of changing it and getting that law removed. It's just such a bad, I mean, it is unconstitutional, absolutely unconstitutional to be using America as a science lab.
Yeah, and then because that has global implications, of course.
Absolutely.
Whatever happens here will have global implications. And it's funny because I always think, when I hear stories like yours, read books like yours, which I will finish. I'm going to be doing that soon. It always makes me very sad, because I think, how much can these people hate humanity? How much hate do they have for the human beings on this planet to be an Erich Traub or worse? So, they get these evil thoughts, and they act on them, and they turn them into reality. So it's a hatred of the human race in my book.
And I believe there's, a battle, kind of like a battle between good and evil kind of playing out, or at least the forces that don't like humanity, that I believe, in other entities and stuff that exist that do not like humanity, and kind of influence those people in power that, because, I mean, it's absolutely criminal what they're doing to us.
Now, you're into esoteric philosophies and spirituality.
Right.
So what has this done to you on a spiritual level? Like, what practices are you implementing spiritually to heal and protect your entity, your vibration? Do you meditate? Like, what are you doing for yourself spiritually?
Absolutely. I have these things, and spirit allies and things of that nature. I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm very in tune with spiritual realms, and that actually is one of my big strengths. I think that kind of keeps me on my feet. I think everybody needs a foundation. I believe in a creator. You call him God or what? It doesn't have to be, but a creator force. Right? I believe in that, and that's kind of. But I also believe there's also kind of like a hierarchy of this. I believe the angels, you got the jinn, and I believe that some of them did not like humanity when we were created. That's like the myth, and I think there's a lot of truth in myth, right? I think a lot of those have a lot of truth in them.
Absolutely.
And I think, some of them say, "I don't want to bow down to him. We're better than him." The story of Iblis, not liking humans, and kind of like started this war with us. And I mean, that's just my personal belief. I believe in that.
I agree. And I think it is a spiritual war.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I do. That's what I think too. Yeah. It's like
for domination over our souls, because I mean, I remember the first time I read Dante's Inferno and I saw those different levels of hell. And that resonated to me so much, because I really believe that the demonic hierarchy is very similar to that, and that there are demons that can, push through the veil and enter into our spiritual realm and affect us and make us do bad things. I mean,
influence. It's all influence. Like, they influence us. Ultimately, we make decisions, and we're responsible for those decisions. But of course, that's what I think, and especially when people have a lot of power, this power corrupts them, and then they're very vulnerable to these forces. And it's kind of, that's what I see playing out. Like, if you want to ask me what the big picture is, that's what I believe. Like, I think there's kind of like this war that they don't, some of them don't like it. Some of them do, though. Some of them like us, I think, some of them, it's just like humans, I'd say. I'm referring to the class of beings that I would call the jinn. And that covers the elementals and all of that stuff. I think it's all under that class, but I think, they had a problem. Some of them had a problem with us, and it's kind of been like a hot war ever since. And I think there's a lot of truth in a lot of the myth and like some of the religion. Like, I know the Quran talked about them and stuff, and to me, they exist. And I know you probably cover some of this stuff on your channel, because
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, but that's my strength is tuning into the spiritual, and I love animals too. I like your animal totems and things of that nature, I'm a very spiritual.
Everything is frequency and vibration,
right?
And if you live in a bubble, in a world where everything is negative frequency, negative vibration, you open yourself up to these demonic and not so good forces. And you have to just protect yourself with a white light all the time. And I mean, look what they did with bells, right? All of a sudden, church bells and all these bells from hundreds and hundreds of years ago have vanished. They bury them. Because why? Bells have a frequency of healing. They vibrate a healing resonance. So now they're digging up all these bells, and people are getting hip to that.
Yeah, and I feel like we're here for a reason. And I think we have the opportunity to do as much good as we can while we're here. I don't, it's like, for me, it's like I'm constantly working on myself, but I'm also, it's like, how can I give back to the world? Because I think that's part of why we're here. And you do what you can for the world. Like, this stuff needs to be known. And it's like, if I know this stuff and I don't tell anybody, then that kind of falls on me. And that's why I kind of feel like obligated. But I think, I think we, when we die, I think we just continue on to something in the next, in another realm. But I think definitely what we do here will affect how, will affect that other realm that we're in. Like, because we have to face, I believe we do have to face ourselves at the end of the, at the end of life. You have that review, the life review. And I believe, because I had a really hard, start. I believe I was sick all my life, and I had like a lot of neurological problems when I was younger, and I was kind of like a renegade, and I just was a troublemaker. And I mean, I was never out to hurt anybody, but I just, me and my buddy and stuff, just we would go off the deep end and everything. And then so it all came to an end, and I kind of like cleaned up my act, and then I wanted to know about the world, and I was like, why am I here? What is my purpose here? I get it all, I get and all this just a mess, and now it's like, why am I here? What what did I come here for? And that's what opened me up. I was kind of like, I wanted to learn about the world, so I started reading all of these books and stuff, and just all that stuff was very interesting to me, especially in the realm of like conspiracy theory, paranormal. That was all really interesting to me. I love reading about the afterlife, near-death experiences, things like that. And so I kind of like would read far and wide on all this stuff, and that's how I kind of came into my own being and like being strong with myself, like just being, centered into this, I know why I'm here. I know what I have to do. And that's just kind of like, that's the journey I'm taking. And
Well,
sometimes I wonder if like maybe I was I decided that I would get sick so I could do all of this work for everybody or something.
Could be. It could have just
Maybe,
been part of your journey, your soul journey, to put yourself through that so that you can share this with other people. And I guess and again, I didn't finish a book, and I will.
No, it's okay.
But I'm thinking that
the audiobook's coming. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off.
Go ahead. The audiobook's coming out?
Yeah, the audiobook's coming out soon. So that'll be a really big help for everybody. It's coming out really good. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can listen in your car on the way to work and whatnot. Stuff like
Definitely.
That. Yeah, that's good.
And audiobooks are going off. The audiobooks are selling like crazy.
Yeah, people don't want to read anymore. It's terrible. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. And even myself, I had a hard time at first. I was like, I couldn't even read a page because it was like, I wouldn't even absorb the information.
You have to train yourself. You have to train yourself.
Yeah,
to do that. Because it's not innate in us to be able to read or write. These are learned experiences. And like anything else, they come with hard work and dedication. So when you start reading, it's going to be a PIA, but audiobooks are great. And I like them when cleaning and doing stuff like that. So
I can send you it when it's done.
Yeah, let us know when your audiobook comes out, of course. So I definitely, like I said, want to have you back.
Absolutely. I had a really great time talking to you.
Oh, good. Me too. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
I still have so many more questions for you, Adam.
Yeah. So anytime you want, I'm up for it.
Okay, great. And like I said, I think it's going to be wise if we use Rumble as a sole platform. So
right. That's what I'm doing myself too.
Yeah. This way we can have an open and honest conversation about it. And what I'll do is I'll work it out so that I can link, like I'll tell YouTube, I'll make like a little video saying head over to Rumble to watch.
That's what I do. Yeah, that's what I do. I say, I got a video here, and I leave the link in the description. Exactly. So that's kind of like what I've been using.
Would like get with the program. Like I mean, I love YouTube. I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah.
So far they've been pretty good to me. I can't complain.
But it would be nice to have our free speech back. Yeah.
It would. And it's so sad because it always makes me think, what are they so afraid of?
Yeah. It makes it worse for them.
Afraid of.
Right. It makes them worse. Like it's people then start thinking, well, if they're censoring, there must be something to this, That's so they kind of make it worse for themselves.
Well, Adam, as you know, there is a global awakening. People are waking up. They're finding their own truth. And I have a hard time with the word truth because some people say, well, there's only one truth. And that's not true. Ironically.
There was a quote that when somebody said, many are the roads that lead to the heavens.
Exactly. Because science even changes. What was true in science last month is no longer true. So I always like to say, well, you find your own truth, whatever that may be. But you clearly did the work. Your book is phenomenal so far. I'm halfway through. It's so well researched and so well plotted out. And it's written in language that people can understand. So they don't have to worry about, having to look up scientific definitions, and you cite everything, like I said before.
And sometimes when there's a word that people wouldn't understand, I put the definition at the bottom of the page.
Right. Brilliant. Very good. So again, I will have the link, and it's running across the screen, thesleeperagent.com, so folks can head there. But in the description of this video, I will put all your links, your social media and whatnot, where people can find you, as well as your link to your Amazon book. And we will definitely be scheduling a part 2. I will be very much in touch soon with you. It's been a real privilege and honor to be able to
Yeah,
speak with you today.
I had a great time. Anytime you want to talk, I can come back on.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank,
much. And
thank
I'll be reaching
you.
out to you soon, dear.
Okay.
Take care, Adam.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's really been a joy speaking with Adam today. And again, to reiterate, I'll have all of his links where you can check him out. And I highly recommend you do. His book is really an amazing read. I can't wait to finish it. So, yeah. And again, we are broadcasting live. Well, today is not live. So, as I mentioned earlier, but we always broadcast live on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please be sure to join us. And we love you in the chat room. So please be sure to pop in there and leave any questions, comments that you might have. And you are listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, where we are broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Please join us in welcoming our hosts and guests. We have so many different diverse hosts and guests on this network. They work so very hard at what they do, and for little or no monetary gain. And they are amazing individuals. They have guests on that, like Adam, who are very well versed in their respective fields. And the fields have a wide range, ranging from ancient history, ufology, paranormal, mysticism, metaphysical, esotericism, and you name it, any level of high strangeness, and other topics too. So be sure to support this network. We all greatly appreciate it so very much. And check out my social media too, because I'm always trying to share who's coming up next and what's happening that day on the network. And I'm very grateful to the folks over at UPRN and for having me as a host as well. So thank you again. Enough of my babbling. Have a blessed rest of your day and upcoming weekend as well. Thank you so much. Please hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me when you do. Thank you so much and have a great one.